Hi, my name's David Adelson. The AANS Leaders in Neurosurgery interview series leads the effort to preserve the history of neurosurgery by creating a video library of the influential individuals in our field. It is with great personal pleasure that I have the opportunity to interview one of our legends in pediatric neurosurgery, Alexa Canady. She is well known both in pediatric neurosurgery and neurosurgery for her body of work and talent as a neurosurgeon and pediatric neurosurgeon, researcher, and educator, and particularly her dedication to her patients, those particularly in the underserved in the inner city where she practiced most of her career in Detroit, Michigan. Now retired, supposedly, she will always be remembered for her brilliance of discussion, knowledge of the field, as well as the gaps in our knowledge, and her care for patients, her caring of individuals she taught and mentored, as well as being a pioneer in the field as the first African-American woman neurosurgeon in the United States. She began her career at the University of Michigan in 1967, where she fell in love with medicine after working in a genetics lab and attending a genetic counseling clinic, where she then earned her BS degree in zoology from the University of Michigan in 1971. When she heard of the chance to win a minority scholarship in medicine, it was an instant connection. In her words, her additional skills in writing and debate helped her earn a place in the University of Michigan Medical School, where she graduated cum laude in 1975. She then went on to complete her surgical internship at Yale New Haven Hospital in 1975, and then went to the University of Minnesota for her residency, becoming the first female African-American neurosurgery resident in the United States under the tutelage of Shelley Chu. She then completed her fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia from 1981 to 1982 under Louis Shute. She then began practicing for a short time at the Henry Ford Hospital in Michigan before going to work at the Children's Hospital of Michigan, where she then became a board-certified neurosurgeon in 1984 and chief of neurosurgery at the Children's Hospital of Michigan in 1987. She held that position until her first retirement in 2001. While there, she quickly gained admiration for being a patient care-focused surgeon, and during her career, she specialized in congenital spinal abnormalities, hydrocephalus, trauma, and brain tumors. She rose up through the academic ranks due to her clinical, research, and educational accomplishments, eventually becoming a professor in neurosurgery at Wayne State University. Dr. Canady and her husband then moved to Pensacola, Florida after her first retirement in June 2001. However, after meeting local doctors and realizing the need for a pediatric neurosurgeon in the area, Dr. Canady decided to join the staff at Sacred Heart Hospital, working as a consultant and pediatric neurosurgeon until her quote-unquote final retirement in 2012. Though eventually finally retired, she continued to be involved in research at Wayne State University. Throughout her 30-plus year career in pediatric neurosurgery, Dr. Canady has helped thousands of children. She has been recognized numerous times for her dedication and service with a multitude of awards. She holds 3 honorary degrees, doctorates of humane letters from the University of Detroit Mercy and Roosevelt University, as well as a Doctor of Science degree from the University of Southern Connecticut. She has received awards for her excellence in education with teaching awards and is inducted into the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame in 1989. She received the American Medical Women's Association President Award in 1993 and the Distinguished Service Award from Wayne State University Medical School in 1994. So it is with great pleasure that I have the opportunity today to have a quote-unquote fireside chat with Dr. Alexa Irene Canady. Alexa, so great to see you. How are you doing?
It's always interesting to hear your life recalled in a glossy version. I'm doing fine. Life's good.
Well, I just wanted you to know, I was a little nervous about this. I really went out to read up on you because it was just such an honor to have someone like yourself, here on this interview series, but then for me to have a chance to have this chat with you.
Well, it's fun. It'd be fun.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your life and what molded you into the person you've become.
Well, I think, we all first are molded by our families. And I come from a family that valued education. I'm actually, was unusual at the time, I'm third generation college educated. And there are not a lot of people at that time in America who could say that at all. And not many African-American families could say that. But my grandmother was a college professor. Her sister also attended college. And my grandmother went to college in 1915, I believe, 14 or 15. So we always valued education in our family. And I think that's the major influence. The question was never, where are you going to go to school? It was not whether or not you were going to school, but it was where you were going to school and what you were going to do, so that you understood that you needed to do something. Mother always said that your job is to go to school, and it's a job because you're the one that benefits from it, not me. So I'm not going to make you go to school, but you need to understand you benefit. And I think that's an important philosophy.
Yeah, I tell the same thing to my kids, but I don't have them seeing that as their job. I love the fact that your dad was a dentist. Mine was too.
Yeah.
I think I think at some point or deep down, he would have liked to see me in dentistry, but I think we both diverged in other directions. Tell me what, your parents were like.
Well, we used to have very lively dinner conversations about the world and politics and science and anything. And it was a household where if you asked what something meant, you were sent to, in those days, the encyclopedia or to the dictionary to look it up. And I remember sitting at my mother's side while she used to do the Reader's Digest, the old Reader's Digest vocabulary test. And she'd always get them right. And it really irritated me because I couldn't. So we came from a family of education and also community involvement. My mother started a number of organizations in Lansing, was on the school board in Lansing, ultimately was on the YWCA National Board, several bank boards, and also was the president of Delta Sigma Theta, which is about a 15,000 person Black women public service sorority. So we believed in being involved in the community and active, as did my father as well. He was very active with the NAACP.
Wonderful. Well, as you know, getting an education, really, no matter the circumstances, can be fairly stressful for many of us, and even with a wonderful background that you had. But as I understand it, things weren't all rosy during your career. So tell us about that time.
No, they weren't. And I think that's not just me for whom that's true.
That's what I said. It was stressful for me. So I wanted to hear your story too.
Well, I went to college young. I was 16 when I went. And I was, my first year was pretty unremarkable. I was a debater on the Michigan debate team and had a lot of fun. We traveled around the country debating, kind of like any sports team would do. They've subsequently become much more stellar and really are one of the best debate teams in the country right now, just for a plug for the University of Michigan. But I went to school and had always planned to be a mathematician. I always liked mathematics, the orderliness of it. And I was sure I'd be a mathematician. And about my second year, it became clear I didn't like it like they liked it, the real mathematicians. And I was lost because I had been so goal focused, which is kind of my way, and no longer had a goal. So I went to differential equations for a semester and didn't go to class. I had one semester where I went to class 16 hours and passed everything. And so I tried it another semester and was totally not successful. And I actually ended up on academic probation. I went for a number theory exam and found out it had been a take home. So I'd been a little bit too absent there. So it was interesting. I was just lost. I no longer had a goal. And so my father actually that summer came up once a week and had dinner with me. And we never discussed my academic deficiencies, but it managed to kind of get me on my back on my game. And I got involved with the Michigan Daily, which was the University of Michigan student newspaper, and became a very active participant in that. And really through my brother, found the program for minority students for the summer. He was also at Michigan at the time, and it didn't conflict with my summer job as an editorial page editor because we didn't start work until 5 o'clock since we were commenting on what happened during the day. So I had both jobs, and because of that, I could buy a car, which in those only $1,900 brand new and $50 a month. So I could save enough money to make the payments all year. I didn't expect to find a career, but I did. Motivations take you in funny places.
Well, obviously you got on track and got into medical school. How did you find medical school? What did you sort of see as the challenges there?
I loved medical school. I hadn't been a student in a very long time, and I hadn't had a goal in a very long time, and now I did. So I was a very good medical student. I studied every day except Friday. Friday was my off day. You know, I gave myself permission to not study on Fridays. And I soaked it all in. I just loved it. I became obsessed with medicine.
How did you get interested in neurosurgery then? Was that one of the rotations or?
Yeah, well, no, before that, we had a 2-year interdisciplinary course called Neurobehavioral Sciences, which was pharmacology, neuroanatomy, neurobiology, psychiatry, all of them kind of rolled together. But it was an extremely well-taught course. And I found that it was a course that I could study and enjoy. And so my choice of neurosurgery, it really was neuroscience first. And it was based on the fact that I liked studying it rather than just having to study it. Then that summer of my second year, we had 6 weeks off still to study for the board exam, and also to that's your last real summer off. And I had a friend in St. Louis, Brenda, who was ultimately became the dean of students at Duke, who said, well, I know a pediatric neurologist down here who'll let you shadow him. And so I shadowed him for a month, and she let me live at her house for free. And then again, how things go. My dad had a friend who ran the emergency room in my hometown, Lansing, Michigan. And he said, well, if you're really interested in neurosurgery, you should do neurosurgery. So he talked to the local neurosurgeons, and I shadowed them the second half of my vacation. And I just like neurosurgery better. In neurosurgery, you said, I think this is what it is, and you were right or wrong. And I liked that honesty and self-correction associated with that.
Wow.
And from then on, I was a neurosurgery junkie. I mean, I went to all of the neurosurgery conferences. I was scheduled to be someplace else. I knew all the guys. By the time I was a senior student, they were calling on me in conference. I was so present all the time. But the chairman never really liked me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure there were lots of different people who had different thoughts about your going into neurosurgery, first, whether it be a woman or an African American or anything, right?
Well, Carol Miller was there at the time. So there was a woman neurosurgeon there. The writer didn't ever warmed up to me at all. In fact, he made me come back for a Christmas Eve interview when I had already gone home, which consisted primarily of him telling me how many people had washed out of his program. So I never really put them very high on my list.
I was going to say, real sense of encouragement there, huh?
Well, people said that the most important thing is to think about the chairman in a program when you're selecting it, and I did.
And that's how you found University of Minnesota?
Well, no, actually, that's even more interesting. I went to Yale because I had done a sub internship at Yale and had been well received and enjoyed it there. And I liked it there. And I was their selectee at the time. Residency and internship were separate. And so the neurosurgeons got to pick a surgical intern. And about 6 weeks into my internship, I got a call from Shelley Shue. And he offered me a position in Minnesota, because when I'd interviewed, you had to do 2 years of general surgery still. And I was not interested in doing that. I didn't like general surgery. And he said, no, that was no longer true. And so then I went to the chairman at Yale, Dr. Collins, and said, Shelley Shue has offered me a job. I think I'm your selectee. I know that you don't announce it till October, but would you tell me? Because he needs to know in a few days. And he said, if you want my job, you'll wait. And so I went to Minnesota.
Yeah, it wasn't like the match we have now where everybody knows the same day.
Right. And it was a cultural difference. I mean, here I was trying to get a position nobody had ever had. And he wanted me to wait for one which he thought was valuable, but he didn't understand that that was not a reasonable request. Afterwards, Joan Venice was at Yale at the time. She told me I should have known. And I said, I would have known if you told me. And it turned out really well for me, because I still am part of the Yale family. And they made it a point that year to teach me things. So I would have to tell people in Minnesota I learned it there. And I'm part of the Minnesota and the Yale family. So from a career perspective, it turned out really pretty well.
Oh, that's a great story. So I know that was a kind of a tumultuous time, and there's often lots of different views of people in training and things like that. But yet, you succeeded during that time. I mean, I understand you were named Resident of the Year at, and toward the end. And but tell us some of the instances or, the pluses and minuses that occurred during your training.
Well, I think as a Black woman, I was really prepared, more so than other people. I'd had experiences in the past where people didn't like me or were unpleasant to me. And I had learned to see it as their problem, not mine. And so I had the tools to handle it. So I didn't really care whether anybody liked me or not. I only cared that they signed the certificate at the end of my training. And that attitude can protect you a lot. Now, obviously, my life there wasn't that bad. We only had one small episode, and that really had nothing to do with my race. It had to do with the shortage of residents that we had. And they wanted me to finish my residency in a junior residency spot, and I frankly refused. So Dr. Shue and I had, very pleasant, he labeled the first conversation friendly. Friends were just meeting as friends, although, it's never quite that way when you're the resident and he's the chairman. But we did manage to work out a resolution that provided a positive situation for me and helped solve his call problem. So he agreed to I agreed that I would take the call for him because he had a real problem. And in exchange, during the day, I did 2 months of neuro-ophthalmology, 2 months of pediatric neurology, and 2 months of neuropsych. So it turned out well, but it was very stressful until we came to that resolution. But, I don't know if you knew Shelley, classy guy.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a great deal from him about process, that one should go through things with the proper process, even if you think the answer right away. He was a very meticulous surgeon and a very meticulous thinker, and I will always be thankful for having had a chance to train under him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What were the positives in the sense of, what you felt like you took away from your chairman? And, that's wonderful to hear. I've heard wonderful things about him that I didn't know. So,
yeah.
Residency, at times is challenging, but I mean, you found a way to rise to the top. I mean, do you feel that neurosurgery has and was truly a meritocracy, or it's still rife with the politics of kind of what we deal with in society?
I think meritocracy is a relative falsity. I mean, we talk of meritocracy, but there's all kinds of advantages built in to meritocracy. Some of them you have control over and some of them you don't have control over. All you can do, and I guess what I've tried to explain to people through the years is you want to get in the door. And once you get in the door, the career is yours to do with as you can. So we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to get in. But what they make of their career, some people get lucky, you're in the right place at the right time. My career ended up bigger than it would have because I was first, not because of anything I could do. And I think you need to understand that if somehow you lose focus in neurosurgery on the work, then you've lost focus. It's not, who cares whether other people notice how good you are or not? If that's your focus, being famous rather than doing good work, then I'm a little skeptical of those people.
That's a very good point. When we start to look at it, if it's not about the work or about the patients, really, why are we there, right? So,
Exactly.
Well, and then what was your decision to really focus on pediatric neurosurgery?
Well, it was a little bit like the neuroscience decision. It's what do I doing the most? And I enjoyed the kids. I enjoyed the diseases that they had. I enjoyed the absence of chronic pain. And pediatric hospitals smell better. And in the course of my day, I could sit down and play video games with my patients. I always knew what the best toys were for my nieces and nephews. I mean, people underestimate the value of joy in your day. And children, even though they're very ill, don't know they're very ill always. And so there's still joy and playfulness. And I got to play every day and get paid well. Yeah. So my world.
That is so true. I enjoy that part too. I mean, the ability to smile and laugh on the wards, I think, is so pediatric neurosurgery. It's when I cover the adult side, I don't feel that same joy.
And there's another part to it that you and I understand, which is pediatric care is collaborative. Yeah. There's a different attitude there. Everybody has already decided that they're not going to make the most money in the world because they chose the pediatric side. But because of that, or probably they chose it because they really wanted to do that work. And so we had easy relationships between all the departments. We didn't have squabbles with the ICU. We didn't have squabbles with the general surgeons. We didn't squabble with ortho. Everybody worked together. And that also is a nice model and a nice place to be working.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. It's wonderful to build that collaborative spirit and it's really something that already existed. It's just, putting it down and making everybody aware of it, I think is the biggest part of the challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you spent a lot of time in Detroit, and obviously you've built an illustrious and productive career. What do you want to be known for? What do you see as your legacy in neurosurgery? Well,
we created a department that was really a great department, I think. The parents were welcomed and were participators in our model, so that they had a role and a voice, and we made real efforts to educate them and to give them a say-so in what was going on. But we made it important that the child understood that we were primarily their doctor and not their parents' doctor. And I wasn't sure that they understood that until my retirement party, where one of my patients actually said that. He said, I always knew she was my doctor and not my dad's doctor. And I thought that we had succeeded in giving him that sense that he was the person of interest and he was the person, perhaps not in charge, but about whom we were primarily concerned. Yeah. And so I think those things. And then we worked collaboratively as well with our nurses. And so they were part of the team, and we made decisions as a team. We would discuss issues and come to a resolution that everyone was comfortable with.
Well, you tried to retire early, and so when people talk about life-work balance, it looked like you were achieving that. You know, you had kind of achieved a lot of things, and now you were retiring at a young
Right.
age, and yet it didn't last long. So, but tell me a little bit about your thinking about retiring and then unretiring and then retiring.
Well, I retired because I didn't see a way to reshape my work in Detroit to give me a better work balance. And so, and my husband was from the South and was a little tired of the winter. So he had moved to Detroit when we married, and I thought it was fair that we would go someplace he would like to go. So he came back to Pensacola. He was Navy and had been here for his first duty station. And I came here retired. And but I always went to pediatric conferences on Tuesday. So I went to the pediatric conferences on Tuesday here, just as an entertainment, really. And then after I'd done that about 6 months or so, the pediatricians approached me, and they had a problem here. There was no pediatric neurosurgery in the Panhandle. And the Panhandle's, about 400 miles long. So they had to go to Jacksonville, which is a long way, about 4 hours from here, 3.5, 4 hours from here. And so they asked me if I would consider going back into practice. So it was really at their request. I was able here to sculpt a little different kind of arrangement. So I really didn't work weekends. I worked during the week, Monday through Friday, and I would round on Saturday, but I wouldn't see new patients on Saturday. And if trauma came in at night, I did not take care of the trauma until the morning. When it came in, the on-call guys did. So it was a nice arrangement. I did it for about another 8 years, I think. And it was kind of fun because I wasn't the chairman anymore. I didn't have partners. It was just me. So I got to finish in the purest of neurosurgery again, just me and the patients doing what we thought was best.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's just great.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of your attempt to get some balance in your life and work through the stresses of neurosurgery, huh?
Right. I think so, yeah. I don't think you realize how stressful it is until you get on the plane and they close the door, and then you have this relief. You've probably been there.
Yeah, I like that isolation. I travel a lot in certain instances just so I can have that break or that peace for a little while.
Right.
They can't reach you on the plane.
Exactly.
So I'd love your summation. Give me a final sort of thought on what you see as your legacy in neurosurgery.
Well, I think I made the world different for people who follow me. So for minority women in particular, it's a world that they now can easily aspire to as they see models erupt around them. For white male residents, I've changed their world because their entry to neurosurgery comes through people of color now. And so it's not a world that they own. So it's a matter of ownership. Who owns this world? And it's a world that should be owned by all of us. And my part in it is just the opening levy into saying, hey, let's make it better. I've always felt, as I told you, our department was collaborative. I always think that you benefit very much from more opinions. And people who are unwilling, for example, to engage the ICU because they're not neurosurgeons, with the idea that they don't know anything, is false. Everybody knows something. Even the cleaning lady can teach you something. I recently had an example. I have one of those picture frames that moves, and my great nephew was here, and he went over to it, as you would expect, and started messing with it. And we finally realized that it actually was a touchscreen. So we've had it for 4 years, didn't know it was a touchscreen, but the 1-year-old taught us that it was the touchscreen. So many opinions, many positions, many perspectives tend to get you closer to the real perspective, the true perspective, than skews one way or another. And that's all that we all are trying to do, again, to do better for the patients, to understand better for the patients, to make the patients more able to talk to us and to feel free to talk to us. Because information is everything in neurosurgery. I mean, 95% of the time you have the diagnosis after you talk to the patient. And if they're not willing to talk freely with you, and if they're not comfortable talking freely with you, then you are hampered in your ability to do your job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's ultimately what, when we look at neurosurgery and look at medicine today, it's really about, and it's obviously and should be patient-centered, but many times it's not, whether it's because of the financial issues or if it's due to the politics or people's perspectives. But if you can really indeed shape that aspect of what we do and how we do it together and collaboratively, at least it's my thought, when we really need to go toward a more 360 approach toward care.
Right.
And it's not just about the neurosurgeon, it's about all of the other subspecialties, right?
Right. I would put one little warning note in.
Mhm.
And that is what I see now too, is a tendency towards big data, big programs, algorithms. And somehow the individual patient feels lost in that system. He has no contact with anybody he knows when he goes to the hospital. And I think we have to do something about that. New faces at your time of greatest peril are very unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to create a quote unquote safe space for someone if it's just corporate, or if it's just all new faces all the time.
Exactly.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Alexa. I think we've come to the end of our time. Just want to thank the viewers for listening in and getting a chance to meet and experience Dr. Canady, who is truly one of our most illustrious and legends in pediatric neurosurgery. So thank you.
Enjoy talking with you today.
It's great to see you, Alexa. Enjoy retirement.
I will. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.